We're here with a special guest, ladies and gentlemen, friend of the show. He is a leftist social critic, journalist, and commentator, Nick Cruse, who's also a host and co-founder of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, what's poppin', Jimmy and Kurt? Always good to do your show, man.
It's always good to see you. And so I saw this on the Twitter, and it's one of our favorite things to talk about is the Democrats and Republicans, are they materially different? And so I saw this, I guess Cornel West went on Sean Hannity's show. I didn't know that. I didn't see it. I saw Cornel West go on Anderson Cooper's show.
How do you do with Brother Hannity?
I heard it freaked out Sean when he called him brother.
He started looking more like the eagle from the Muppets.
I got to watch that. But anyway, Kyle Kulinski watched it, and he makes this argument that that we like to knock down. So here it comes.
Why overwhelmingly do minorities and African Americans, Hispanic Americans, why are they still continuing to vote in large numbers in the Democratic Party?
Because they're a trillion times better than Republicans, and we have a two-party system.
What scale? How many Scovilles above them?
I think it's the Barbie movie hair that's getting. I don't know what a trillion times. Nick, do you want to just jump in, and what would you like to say about?
My friend Zankin said the hair dye is getting to his brain.
It's like these people now worse than his old hair.
He's like Ken without the charisma.
Yeah, after the brain campaign, these people just became full-fledged Democrats now. They don't even hide it now, and they endorsing a guy who literally cut millions of people from the health care. That's who they are saying is better than the opposition. I remember when they used to be against ICE. Jimmy, do you remember that? When they used to say abolish ICE. Joe Biden is funding ICE $6 billion more than Donald Trump did. They had a border industrial complex, Comic-Con, where they was talking about, like, man, it's crazy how much Joe Biden is actually funding us more than the Republican administration was. They got all these new toys. They got robot dogs. That's because of Joe Biden. But they don't care about that.
The Democrats in unison voted to crush a railroad strike, which is fascism. Yes. The Democrats in unison voted for war, to saber rattle with the nuclear power, to do a proxy war in Ukraine.
They did it a trillion times better than Republicans.
They did it a trillion times better. The only people calling for the end of those wars are right-wing Republicans. At what metrics could you say that? I mean, I think nuclear war is a little worse. But anyway, you want to hear some more? He has some more to say, and then we'll come back to you, Nick.
We don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So either the Republican or the Democrat is going to win, and minority communities have accurately come to the conclusion, oh, the Democrats are just way better. They're just way better.
Is that what has happened, Nick? Have minority communities come to the realization that Democrats are just way better?
People like me and RBN in our community, they don't count. We don't count because what Kyle forgets is that half of black people don't vote. And then you take the amount of black people who do vote, you have around 20% that vote Republican independent. So, you don't even have half of black people who vote for Democrat. And you can tell that he's a Democrat operative because he said that we're looking at these policies and we made this calculated decision that Democrats are better. And I'm telling you, for the people who do vote Democrat, they vote out of their civic duty. They're not making this calculation. Oh my God, Joe Biden is factually better than Donald Trump. A lot of people vote just out of civic duty, but a lot of people don't because they know the system has failed them. Most people don't vote because they know Jim Crow Joe and the Democrat Party offer the same thing as the Republican Party does. It's an absurd thing to say.
Wait, but Nick, have you figured this in? Kyle hangs out with a lot of black people. That's why he has Eminem hair.
Yeah,
they accept him as they once did Eminem.
What's that, Nick?
Yeah, he really got his heart on the pulse of the community here. You know really what's going on. Like, this is completely out of touch from Kyle Kulinski, and I think he just essentially take his political taste from Crystal Ball. I think ever since they got together, he just followed her direction.
Well, I think Democrats are a trillion times better at saying what you want to hear as long as you don't care about actually having any results from it. They're also a trillion times better at talking down to you like you're a little baby. Like if you're a really good little boy, Santa Claus is going to invade your home and leave you some things of substance from Walmart.
I thought a trillion times zero is still zero.
DSA is a failure because you have the DSA like people like Kyle Kulinski and all these socialists that endorsing Joe Biden, as you mentioned earlier, who broke the rail strike. And what a lot of people don't mention is that Joe Biden broke his campaign promise regarding giving federal contracts to union busters. He gave a federal contract to Amazon as it was busting the unions that Chris Smalls was organizing. But meanwhile, Bernie Sanders and these progressives do a photo op with Chris Smalls as they endorse the guy who undermined his union. It's really disgusting what these people get away with.
It's unbelievable. So, like I like to describe it, is that the Democrats are the party of war. They're anti-worker. They're anti-union. They're the party of war. They're the authoritarians. They're in bed with big pharma, military-industrial complex. They're doing wars now all over the place and they're not any.
They're not part of the police state.
They're the police. Again, they just invented a new police department just out of nowhere. $2 billion to fund it, and they won't give you a minimum wage. They won't give you health care. They won't give you free college. They won't give you education. They won't give you infrastructure. They won't fix homelessness. But they will give $150 billion to the war machine to go to Ukraine. 100% corruption. So somehow and Sable rattle with me. So I'm going to play a little bit more. Maybe he'll get to how they're way better, and minorities know Democrats are way better. You know that Barack Obama and Joe Biden deported twice as many Hispanics as Donald Trump? Did you know that? Did you know?
Yes.
Did you know that when Donald Trump put the ban on Muslim immigrants, refugees at the airports, it was because Barack Obama had spent 8 years bombing the shit out of people of color around the world? That's what gave us Muslim refugees? Do you not know that? You know that Barack Obama dropped more bombs than George Bush? Did you not know that George Bush the first couldn't pass NAFTA? It took a Democrat to do that, called Bill Clinton, which gave the Blue Dog Democrats cover, and they cut the legs out from underneath unions for a generation, and that a Republican couldn't do that, and that's why Bill Clinton actually wasn't the lesser of two evils. He was the worst evil. Do you think they would have let John McCain kick 1.1 million families out of their home during the Wall Street collapse of our economy? No, it took a black guy named Barack Obama to sweet talk everybody, and you thought he's not going to screw us. He's a black guy. He was the tool of Wall Street. His entire cabinet came from Citicorp. That's trillion times better than Republicans. They're way better. He was way worse for black people. Black people's wealth went down under Barack Obama. Barack Obama didn't clean out the prisons. Joe Biden is the one. He's the architect of our prison system, which is unbelievably racist, and he brags about it. These are things that Democrats do that Republicans can't do. So this idea that the Democrats are a lesser evil or way better, he's just making that up now. It just went trillion. He went from 3 years ago saying I won't vote for Joe Biden and I'm done with the Democrat to now this. Wow. This is, I don't know what it's like his politics have the substance of cotton candy, so why not have the same hairstyle? I don't get. So, well, look, maybe he'll get to the point. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, it's absurd because, as you mentioned before, Donald Trump couldn't get away with what Joe Biden just did, throwing millions of people off their health care. So you had the Center for Medicare Services who actually proposed this new regulation that was based on studies, estimated millions of people off their health care. And when that happened, you had, at the time, Senator Kamala Harris, 26 other Democrats, including Joe Biden. They wrote a letter putting pressure, and this was around the time where Bernie Sanders said that Donald Trump is about to cut Medicare. You want to know what happened? Donald Trump folded. Donald Trump pulled the order, and then they saved millions of people from health care. So now that Joe Biden is president, now no one cares about this. And now the Biden administration put forward this motion. I'll continue this story. I read today. It was incredible. No one is talking about this. Kyle Kulinski lied to his audience. You may get to it soon when he said Democrats want to protect Medicare. No, Joe Biden is throwing millions of people off of their health insurance. That's something that Donald Trump even couldn't accomplish. The Democrats are the most evil.
And your point is, if Donald Trump was doing it, the Democrats would be, half the country and the media would be screaming about it. But because Joe Biden is doing it, they go to sleep. Just like when Barack Obama did all those horrible things, the Democrats and the left and the media went to sleep. And that's why the Democrats are actually not the lesser of two evils. They're actually the ones who can do greater evil. And well, here we'll get
Are
to
you going to stop going to a church just because they molested you?
it. Here we go.
Like 98% of the Republican Party wants to cut Social Security, wants to cut Medicare, wants to cut Medicaid, and the Democrats don't. Some of them do.
Okay.
That's a lie.
But they will anyway.
But they'll go along with it. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, that's a lie because it's the Biden administration that is allowing the Center for Medicare Services to put towards this new regulation that will allow federal bureaucrats to interfere with states' distribution of Medicare. And there's studies that said they're going to cut healthcare for millions of people, and that's happening under the Biden administration. That's his government that is doing that. And under the Trump government, they attempted to do that, but then they walked it back after public pressure from Democrats and Bernie Sanders, who's now silent, and Kulinski, who's now silent on this story. Instead, they're running propaganda for Democrats, pretending that they are the pro-healthcare side. It's actually despicable.
I would say, okay, so let's see what else. Maybe he'll come up with a reason. Who knows? They're a trillion. Remember, they're a trillion times better.
Yeah.
And Nick, you're lying because you're black, and you know that Democrats are way
You're a white
better.
supremacist.
You're probably a white supremacist. Okay, here we go.
But the overwhelming majority of them don't. So maybe that's why. Maybe because they're better on a lot of substantive issues. Now, that's not to say they're good. That's not to say they're perfect. They're far from it.
What?
But if you do an objective empirical analysis as to whose policies help regular working class people of color more, it's not close.
Thanks
It's not
for the
close. So
mandates.
that's why.
Hey, thanks for those band-aids.
Thanks for the lockdowns and mandates.
Yeah.
You helped you a trillion times more.
Hey, I bet the 75,000 healthcare workers in New York State would have a different opinion of how much Democrats stick up for workers. Hey, I bet you and issues. I bet they would have a different idea over at the railroad. I bet the railroad workers would have a way different
Jimmy,
opinion.
do you think it would be a trillion times different?
So he realized that black wealth tanked under Barack Obama, right? That was Barack Obama that led to a boom in racial income inequality. Well, it's just completely a infactual argument that he's making. It's a fact-free argument, I should say, that Kyle is making here. It just vibes. It's just Democrats are better. That's just my vibe. And when he said, they're not perfect. What do you mean they're not perfect? They just waged a little bit World War III. We fund a little bit of Nazis. They're not perfect. Yeah, they fund ICE $6 billion more than Trump. Perfect. Nonsense is this.
They funded. Go ahead.
Jimmy, if he made this video just telling us we were really born on Krypton and he's our dad, that would be less dishonest than the video he did make.
The Democratic Party, the reason why we have censorship now is because of the Democratic Party. The reason Bill Clinton took us from 50 giant media companies down to 6, controlled by a handful of billionaires. Bill Clinton gutted welfare at the same time as he exploded the prison population, hired 100,000 more cops, and deregulated Wall Street, which killed our economy, crashed it within 10 years. And who got hurt the most? Black and brown people.
Trade times.
That's it. These are the things that Bill Clinton, the Democrats, could do that Republicans could never do. And by the way, Bill Clinton had a secret deal to privatize Social Security with the Republicans. And you know what stopped it? Was the blowjob. And you know how I know that? Because I read a book called Listen Liberal that obviously Kyle Kulinski hasn't read. And it would teach him that it would disabuse him of this silly idea that the Democratic Party is a trillion times better.
Oh my God.
He went from 3 years ago, he went, Joe Biden is beyond the pale. I'll never vote for him. To now the Democratic Party is a trillion times better. Holy shit, he's sucking some Democratic Party cock hard.
Jimmy,
hard.
There's facts in that book that would turn his hair white if he saw it.
So let's see.
Go
ahead.
You had Cuba and many Cuban officials that said that Joe Biden is implementing the Cuban embargo worse than Donald Trump. You had Anthony Blinken in the Biden administration that doubled down on Donald Trump's hardline policies on Iran. You had AMLO from the Mexican government that has called out Joe Biden for political intimidation, censorship, and pushing for war in Ukraine. They also funding separatists in Taiwan, Nazis in Ukraine. But according to Kyle Kulinski, these are just small disagreements. They are deeply unserious people.
They won't give us one thing they ran on. Won't give us the public option. Won't give us the minimum wage. Won't make marijuana legal. Won't clean out the prisons of people who are there for nonviolent drugs. Won't do anything. Won't give us college. Nothing. But they're a trillion times better. They just all voted to start World War III, and Genius says they're a trillion times better. They're the exact opposite of what this moronic idea that somehow we have this huge choice between Democrats and Republicans. The reason why they have to pretend that Donald Trump is a 20-foot tall Nazi made of armor is because you wouldn't vote for Democrats if they didn't make you think that about him. Donald Trump is a disinterested fucking game show host who didn't even want to be president in the first place, and he governed zero differently than anybody else. In fact, he was less of a warmonger than the Democrats and Joe Biden by a mile. So
it was more good. Easier to combat. Like Trump was easy to combat because everyone was in the streets with us.
That's right.
Because they had Trump derangement syndrome, and then soon Biden took over. No one's in the streets with us right now.
No one cares about anything. That's exactly right. And so let me play this a little bit more if he has a little bit more to say.
Sean, that's why they do it. Jesus Christ.
Okay, that's why. Okay, so here I just want to show you. CNN found this, by the way. This is back when you could still criticize Joe Biden.
When they were a trillion times better of his channel.
This is when people thought that Joe Biden wasn't going to be the nominee, and they were criticizing him. So let's watch.
The year 2010, we are going to change the retirement age.
So this is Joe Biden bragging about raising the Social Security retirement age. This is him bragging in 1987 that they instituted a system, which is now happening, which is they raised the retirement age from 65 to 67. Nobody in America even knows it. And by the way, it's going up more. Watch this.
Social Security. You cannot retire at age 65. You have to be 65 years and 3 months old. In the year 2012, 65 years and 6 months.
And he's happy about it. He's like, isn't it great? Isn't this great?
Whoa.
We're fucking over the elderly. Isn't this great? You got to keep working.
Hey, Joe Biden's still working.
That's before Joe Biden was demented. And liberals always said he had the stutter, he had this problem. But Joe Biden used to be very charismatic. And when you look at all his 90s Senate floor speeches, when you look at his 80s speeches as well, he sounded like an evil villain. Like when you look at this speech here, he has like this like James Bond style villain charisma to him, and that's how he made it in politics for a long time. That's why when people say Demented Joe, that's we being ableist because we talking about his stutter. No, that's new because he's demented. This is who Joe Biden was, a smooth talking villain that was waging class war against the working class. But go ahead, Jimmy.
In the year, literally, raise incrementally the retirement age till you reach your retirement age between 68 and 70.
So he wants the retirement age to be 70.
Jeez.
You boil the frog slowly until it doesn't know what's happening.
So there's Joe Biden bragging he's with a swagger about how we're raising the Social Security retirement age. So now old people are going to have to work 5 more fucking years. That's right. And he smiles. Here he is talking about it again.
Incrementally, the retirement age till you reach your retirement age between 68 and 70.
I'm sick of these lazy old people.
CNN's Andrew Kulinski leads up the K-File unit, and he's joining us live. So, Andrew, that clip was from 1987, but you all were able to uncover many more examples of President Biden than Senator Biden proposing changes to entitlement.
Yeah, that's right. So Biden is attacking, and the White House are attacking Republicans for positions that he once held on Social Security. We just heard that clip where he talked about wanting to raise the retirement age in the 1980s. That's something he said repeatedly, but it actually goes beyond that. Take, for instance, his attacks on Rick Scott and this sunset legislation. Now, sunsetting basically means that a program will get authorized for something like 4 years, and then if it's not reauthorized, they don't fund it anymore. That's hence where the term sunset comes from. Now, Biden introduced a bill in 1975 that did the exact same thing. It sunset all federal legislation without exemptions for Social Security and Medicare. And what's interesting about
So he wanted to sunset Medicare and Social Security, meaning end them unless it got renewed. Why would you want to sunset something unless you wanted to end it? And that's what he was doing. What?
By the time the last of my real hair falls out from around the hair plugs, there will be no retirement for old people.
So watch. This is CNN. Again, this is back when it was okay to criticize Joe Biden.
Is Biden's bill to do this sunset legislation, was the first ever of its kind. We just saw on the screen where he was basically boasting about how he sort of almost invented this concept of sunsetting at the federal level. And what's interesting about his attacks now on Rick Scott and Republicans is we saw Rick Scott put in exemptions specifically for entitlement programs into his bill. Biden himself actually did the same thing in 1978. He had another sunset bill that he signed on, and this one specifically also put in exemptions for Social Security and Medicare. But, it also even goes beyond that. We've seen Biden over the course of his career talk about wanting to put, Medicare or being open to putting Medicare, Social Security, things like that on the table in negotiations. Take a listen to this clip from 2005 where he talks about even possibly being open to benefit cuts.
Jeez. Raising the cap, raising the retirement age for people who are now 30 years old, raising the tax on Social Security, cutting benefits. They're all things that have to be discussed, quite frankly.
So there you go. And Joe Biden is one of the guys responsible for this. These are all our military bases across the world.
This doesn't have to be discussed.
And we don't. This is happening right now while Joe Biden is kicking people off Medicare. Right? That happened, right, Nick?
Yeah, isn't it crazy and bone chilling how obedient our media is? Like the second that Joe Biden was chosen, you see a complete flip where you're not allowed to tell the truth about Joe Biden anymore. And that's the famous quote, like you have dictators and tyrants that would be jealous of how obedient the media in our country is to the ruling class. The second that Joe Biden was chosen, you wasn't allowed to talk about this stuff anymore. The same thing as when the second the Ukraine war started, the media wasn't allowed to talk about the Azov Battalion. You had BBC, you had CNN, all these Western publications that talk about the extremism among the Ukrainian neo-Nazis. And then the second the Ukraine invasion happened, all of a sudden they just they are just far right. They're not neo-Nazis. Oh, they're freedom fighters. And the ability of the media just to change on a dime like that is incredible. Before Joe Biden was the chosen one, Kamala Harris called him a racist segregationist. You was allowed to call him.
That little girl was me.
That's right. That little girl was me.
Hello, it was me. And that was before they chose him. You was allowed to call him a racist segregationist. Now I say it to this day, and people think I'm being inflammatory. People think I'm just being outrageous, but it's a fact. He is a racist segregationist, one of the most anti-black politicians in the modern era, and that's just a fact. We look at the crime bill, the bankruptcy bill, the fact he was vice president under the transfer of wealth between Black America and the oligarchy, easily, without dispute, one of the most anti-black politicians in the modern era, however you want to define it.
And the reason why black people vote for the Democratic Party is because there's no one else goddamn to vote for. And like you pointed out already, half the black people don't vote, and they don't even get 20. They only get 30 to 50% of the people who do. So
the same as the white people.
So.
And then it's just like civic duty. Like a lot of people, and this is what the media does on purpose. They pretend that every single vote is an affirmation of Biden's or Trump's policy. A lot of people just vote out of civic duty. A lot of people vote because, oh, my family vote Democrat or my family vote Republican, so I'm going to vote Democrat or Republican. I know a lot of people. I remember a conversation I had a long time ago when people was like, well, we just vote Democrat because that was just what we do. Like, it wasn't any reason. It's just something that your family get used to doing. The same with a lot of Republicans. And so that's among the black people who do vote, which, remember, is around 45% of who do vote. And then you got split that number among Republicans, Democrats, Independents. So you can estimate it's around 35 to 40% who actually do vote Democrat. And then among that number, how many are hardcore liberals? I can tell you from personal experience, not a lot. Just people falling for lesser to evilism, people who doing their civic duty and just checking a mark. Not because they doing a calculated analysis like Kyle Kulinski saying, "Oh, we all think Biden is better." No, it's just people just going through the motion of the culture, and that goes for a lot of different groups as well.
Now, I like to cite a 2016 article in the New York Times when Donald Trump won. They were stunned, so they actually went to the minority communities in Milwaukee, and they talked to people at barbershops, and they asked them how they voted, and they found out that the black and brown people in Milwaukee at barbershops didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. All of them had voted for Barack Obama twice, and the reason they gave was, well, we voted for Barack Obama twice, and our lives got worse. We voted for Barack Obama, and then nothing happened, and then now you want us to vote for Hillary Clinton. Her husband put half of them in prison with the goddamn crime bill, right? And so of the people they talked to, the New York Times, of the black and brown people they talked to, half of them didn't vote, and the half that did voted for someone else besides Hillary Clinton. They voted for a third party. One person, I think, wrote in his own name. And so that's what the black people did that in Milwaukee during the 2016 election. And the way I know that is because the New York Times went there and asked them. But somehow Kyle Kulinski has some insight that more than you do, Nick, into African American voting.
And I want to add this as well because one of my prime objectives at Revolutionary Blackout, and this is my business, right? One of the things is to tell the 35%, 40% of black people who do vote Democrat. I know this may be hard for a lot of people to say. You're wrong. Like not only that many black people don't vote Democrat. The black people who do vote Democrat are wrong, are factually wrong. I want to tell them, and I converted countless black people out of the Democratic Party. You know how I do it? Very simple. I tell them that Barack Obama is responsible for destroying black wealth. I explain to them how Democrats are complicit with the police state. I tell them how Democrats are pro-war and they destroy Africa. All these things. You want to know the response I get out of most black people I know in my community and what I know in the hood? Damn, I didn't know that. Fuck them, man. Like, a lot of people just don't know. Like, they just go through the motions. They go through the process of voting. But then you tell them the facts, they leave. And that's why you got record amount of young black people, the generation that is forming ourselves, that now allowing the corporate media to control the narrative. We are pushing back on this idea, and we are leaving the Democratic Party in drove. So when you have shit libs like Kyle Kulinski, they say, well, Democrats are good because black people vote for Democrats. Well, your job as a communicator is to say, hey, the 35% of black people are wrong. You're just factually wrong when you look at policies. And that's the argument that leftists should be making, not carrying water for Democrat like Kyle Kulinski and using some of the misguided black people as an excuse to cover for the Democratic Party. The first ever op-ed I ever wrote on my Substack was Barack Obama versus MLK. Why black boomers sold us out to neoliberalism. And I make the same argument that we need to go back to our black revolutionary leaders, and these black boomers who vote Democrats are wrong, period. And I would debate anyone on that.
So that's the white moderate, right? Weren't we warned about guys like Kyle Kulinski, the white moderate? Wasn't that what our ML?
They've been bleach blondes.
Right?
We really pissed a lot of people off at RBN because there are a lot of people that make the mistake of saying that Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton is the white moderate. I'm like, no, they're an enemy. Like Malcolm X and Fred Hampton and many of our revolutionary leaders made it clear that people like Jim Crow Joe is the enemy that must be defeated. It's the slick liberal, the Bernie Sanders, the person that asks people for $27 out of your paycheck every damn month. It's that person that I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to struggle with you. But then he votes to send weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. Like, that's the white moderate that they was talking about, the one who sounds good, not the one who's just straight up an asshole. And we said that, and we offended quite a bit of fake progressives in the Bernie community because every single one of them who voted to the racist Democratic Party and endorsed Jim Crow Joe, we didn't let them off the hook. I refuse to let these people off the hook because you are enabling racist imperialist policies that's not harming just my community, but everyone from the poor working class, from the Latinos, Muslims, gay community. Everyone's hurt from neoliberal policies, and I take offense when people say they're the lesser of two evils because I was a victim of the crime bill or the victim of the bankruptcy bill. We are victims of these policies that people like Kyle Kulinski, because they're rich and they out of touch, have no idea we're suffering through.
Cal Kulinski needs nothing from government, which is why there's no urgency to his voice, which is why he tells you to keep doing the same thing over and over that got us to this place, because he needs nothing from government, right? He's now married to a 40 millionaire. Doesn't have a problem that he needs government to fix. He doesn't at all. And he's not going to go to war, so he doesn't give a shit. And he doesn't live in Ukraine, so he doesn't give a shit. He's going to tell people that it's good that Ukraine, they've gotten everything wrong. Everything about COVID, everything about COVID. He abandoned workers during COVID with the mandates. They abandoned workers with lockdowns, and they abandoned everything. So these people are the white moderates that you've been warned about, and it's because they don't need government to do anything for them, and they're just going to reinforce whatever the Democratic establishment tells them to do. And let's remember, the Democratic establishment is not the lesser of two evils. Kurt, you want to say something?
Can I just say something positive? I hope that Kyle is being paid at least 1 trillion times better now that he's a punk shill.
We got an air purifier for you. I want to let you know it's the top of the line air purifier. If you like air purifiers, it's top of the line. And believe me, it costs like it's the top of the line. But if all air purifiers are the same, why did the U.S. Department of Defense select EnviroCleanse to protect and purify the air on board the Navy ships? You ever think of that? It's got patented earth mineral technology plus hospital-grade HEPA filter. So it's got a hospital-grade HEPA filter. This filter. So we're going to have it up here, right? We'll have it up here. And it also destroys cold and flu viruses. No kidding. It destroys COVID. It destroys allergy-inflaming toxins. It destroys mold. Really? That seems valuable. I like that idea that it kills mold. And it's hospital-grade technology. It's so powerful. It's used in thousands of classrooms. And they actually have a promise. EnviroCleanse has a promise. Did you know this? That they promise far fewer colds and allergies and better sleep. I got to put this in my bedroom. We have it in the studio, and I promised I would put it in my bedroom, but then we went out of town for 2 weeks. I'm going to put it in my bedroom. First of all, I want to talk about the CBD because that has helped me sleep. Free air quality. Oh, they also give you a free air quality monitor. So you could test the difference in your own home. So this is what you do. You go to visit EK, the letter E, the letter K, and then Pure, Pure.com. EKPure.com, and use the code Jimmy, and you get 10% off on your EnviroCleanse machine. It's a home air purifier, and you get a free air quality monitor, plus fast free shipping. That's $150 in savings. That's ekpure.com and use the code Jimmy. ekpure.com. Use the code Jimmy. Come see our live shows. We're going to be in Chicago, Rosemont, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, New York City, Pottstown, Pennsylvania, Stamford, Toronto, Toledo, Detroit, St. Louis, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.